Good evening and welcome to the Finance Committee meeting for Thursday, October 14th, 6 p.m. First agenda item is approval of the minutes for the September 14th meeting.
And I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the September 14th, 2021 Finance Committee meeting.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
With that, I'd like to make an amendment to the agenda by adding what we'll call item 2B, and it's titled Discussion/Possible Action, Authorization to Apply for 2021 Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection Recreational Trails Grant for Elmridge Park.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Move on to item 2, we'll call it 2A. Discussion, possible action, authorization to execute grant award, Connecticut DEEP for Elmridge Park improvements. Craig, welcome.
Good to see everyone in person again. So the first item for 2A is the town has been awarded through advocacy at the Capitol from Senator Matt Lesser and State Rep Kerry Wood. We were awarded a $400,000 grant to go towards Elmridge Park infrastructure improvements. The money was actually through OPM, but they have chosen DEEP to be the department that manages this grant. So we just need some approval from Finance Committee and the council for John to execute contracts with the state on behalf of the town. This money, just to go a little bit into depth, we do plan to hire an architect to do some conceptual master planning of the park. There are some areas in the park that need some major improvements. And, you know, once we get some ideas on paper, we will then start into doing the actual work in the park. We would have 2 years to complete this, this project, October 1st, 2023. So we do have some time to really get some ideas down and get going on it. But some of the things we could do would be to renovate Players Field, take the fencing out, raise it, install drainage, possible sod or seed depending on pricing, some erosion control. I think I said regrade it. And if there's money left over, possibly going into some security upgrades to the park for public Wi-Fi and those things. So again, it's going to all depend on what these costs.
Craig, are you looking at the skate park with this money, doing something or
yes,
reformulating whatever the right?
Yes, potentially removing some of the features there and repurposing that area, whether it's for recreational purposes or if we do need to add additional parking spaces to the park, depending on what the usage of Players Field is going to be. So there's been a push behind the scenes for a certain usage of that area. So again, that's why we need to meet with an architect and really lay this place out the way it needs to be done.
Any questions for Craig?
Yeah, so the you mentioned doing a conceptual master plan. So that sounds like it might be something that may be a long-running goal for the park that we would potentially approach over time, or do we think that within this amount of grant funding we'd be able to accomplish most of the tasks within that master plan?
It would depend. A conceptual master plan we could include plans for the pool in there, and with that, the $400,000 is not going to touch that. But with the conceptual master plan, he could lay out a couple different options of what we could do. Mainly, we're looking at that space. If you from Elm Street, if you drew a line right through the pool, through Players Field, back to the skate park, that's the area that we really need to focus on in the park. So we start there and move on.
Because it might be interesting, and I'm not sure how much the architects cost, but, were we to have a plan for the whole site, even going up to where the auditorium is, or not the auditorium, the amphitheater, thank you. Then I don't know if that would put us in a position where other grants come up, we already have a project in hand, and here's, we just need to, chip away at our, our 10-year plan or whatever it is. But I wasn't sure if it was that or more targeted.
Yeah, it can include more of the park for sure. We are going to be hiring this person, but from a functionality standpoint, the park functions pretty well, other than that particular area at this point. I mean, Players Field's closed right now because it's, it doesn't drain well. It was built on a swamp, so we need to fix that area to even make it a viable green space. We might not put a field there. We might just make it a big green space, but it still needs to drain and be functional. Right now, it's not functional. It's not.
And just to that point, my last question was, I think there's been every year kind of comes up, there used to be skating over on the side, but it needs to get dredged, but now it doesn't really stay cold enough to have a lot of thick ice. Is that something that you might take a look at too? Because I guess other than being maybe a retention pond for for the place next door, it doesn't seem like that piece gets a lot of use either.
Not really. Right now, one of the things that we run up against with that is we have to actually send people in to knock it all down. And we couldn't even send people in at the end of the summer to knock it all down because it was so wet this summer. So if there's an ability to skate in the winter, we'll try it. We could include a possible plan. An architect can draw pretty pictures.
Well, I was thinking, just like how you mentioned Players Field, it may not be a ballpark anymore because of the drainage issues on site. Just thinking, is that an underutilized piece, or use it for some other purpose? I don't know, but it might be something to consider as well, because right now it just kind of hangs out over there on the side.
Yeah, it does. I can bring that up to the eventual engineer architect for that.
Nothing for me, thanks.
Yeah.
Do you want me to jump into B?
Well, before we got to approve it, just one question. I know for experience, Players Field is as you noted, extremely wet area. And so part of that project, would you potentially be raising the elevation?
That's something that we have talked about. Yes.
Okay.
I think it needs to be stripped. I think it needs to, we need to make some drainage improvements, and we need to raise it up.
Yeah.
And then pitch it correctly so that it, if we need to crown the field so it drains off, there's definitely some things we need to do. But raising it, I think, would be number one.
Okay.
Yep.
And then, you mentioned it may not be a field, but then that open green space could actually become a multi-purpose space for
Correct.
different sports in different seasons.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So no fencing, kind of a
Yeah, we
I'm sure
could
your
leave it
committee-
open. Yeah, we could leave it open
Yep.
without any fencing. That's a possibility for sure. And we could do multiple things there. We could play soccer. We could play t-ball. You could play lacrosse. You could play cricket.
volleyball, whatever,
Volleyball.
depending on the season.
There's
sure.
a lot of different things we could do with it.
All right. So why don't if we have a motion?
Sure. So with that, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the town to execute the Connecticut Bond Commission grant award for Elmbridge Park improvements for the amount of $400,000.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Are we moving to the full agenda or consent agenda?
That
Consent.
would be consent.
Consent.
So do we need to modify the motion to reflect that?
To,
Add it to the consent agenda?
Whatever you just said.
Yeah,
To the town council's consent
yeah, and
agenda.
add that to the town council's consent agenda for Monday's town council meeting.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And item 2B, authorization to apply for a 2021 Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection Recreation Trails Grant for Elmridge Park.
All right, so this next one, we have submitted this grant before, back in, I think it was 2017, excuse me. But now we're looking to make some improvements to that original plan, and which includes multiple trails being added to Elm Ridge Park, which would allow for some connectivity to West Street, to Grimes Road, to those two neighborhoods or those two areas, and also making these paths handicap accessible, 8 feet wide, which would allow for, ADA compliance as well as public safety access, and then including some adult, recreational components to this. Well, not just adult, but adding a fit trail. What we found during the pandemic was our park usage was through the roof, especially at some of our other walking trails in town. And we feel, there has been a push behind the scenes from some vocal residents in town, but we do feel that there's some merit to this, and we'd like to explore possibly, while we're doing other work in the park, adding this to the mix. Part of the grant calls for a 20% match from the town. And in this situation, after meeting with Steve and with Ray, they've been a really big help in this project, or this proposal. You can match with in-kind service through the town. So, if this grant, if we apply for $200,000, which we think is around the ballpark number, it's not exact, but it's very close. We would need 20% matching with in-kind services. So that's pretty much the gist of this. But what we do need is town council approval for this, as well as advisory board, recommendation too. So the last council meeting is next
So
week.
this is like a
And the grant's due November 1st.
for one. First of all, council approval to apply, and the deadline is November 1st. And the second one is try to cover that one where I can sign the documents. Trying to kill two in one stone, but as I said, we sort of have it already somewhat written from past attempts. So now it's just, as Craig says, just updating it and so on. So I figure it's worth a shot. Maybe I've been on a winning streak for a while. We'll see if we crap out on this one.
Let's hope not.
We want to be like the Red Sox, not like the Yankees.
Uh-oh.
Sorry.
I'm hurt.
I hope my in-laws aren't watching this.
Go run out and start your car up.
And Craig, we were talking previously that the 20% match would be an in-kind, and
Yep.
that would be able to come out of your existing budget.
Correct.
Using what's there.
Correct.
So there wouldn't be a budgetary impact.
It would be work performed on their daily, we would have to really keep track of that goes towards, these proposed trails. We could also use some of the equipment. We could save some costs there. We do have a brush cutter now that we can cut trails with. The highway department does have we have a skid steer. The highway department has a push box that we could use if we need to, because a lot of the costs associated with it are material costs. So I've been working with Steve to get some of the costs off state bid. There's some areas, basically the base of the trail is going to be 6 inches of process alone. And then, you need to add in another 2 inches on top, whether it's stone dust in certain areas. If we're cutting through wood areas, it can be natural, but we still have to cut the trail and make it 8 feet wide. So there's quite a bit of, it's approximately 2 miles that we'd be adding. So, but I think it's worth it. I think it's something that we need to show that we're invested in, and our trails were and are still busy, very busy. So
So, Craig, so it sounds like these are not going to be paved trails, those will be
No.
gravel. So do you have to do anything to prevent erosion of the product itself making up the trails, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, some of them are going to naturally erode, but if you build them up correctly and you give them the proper base, you're doing everything you can to try and prevent that from happening. So it also depends on where it happens. So if you have elevation changes, and you know that park's not perfectly level either. So, we're going to have to work closely with engineering. That's what we've been doing, is to propose a path that you try and prevent that from happening. There could be areas where it could be fine, and there could be areas where we might need to build it up more. So,
And are there any areas in there that are considered wetlands that are off limits, or is this a permissible use in a wetlands, or?
Looking at this, we pretty much put together a trail that, for the most part, avoids wetlands. There's 2 areas where we would need to add bridges. Over near the brooks coming from West Street in, I think it's Hog Brook. There's a bridge that needs to go over Hog Brook, and there's another area. But we did include those bridge costs in the grant proposal.
And just lastly, so you said the Parks Recreation Advisory Board needs to be involved. Are they going to meet before your
Yes,
deadline?
we meet on Tuesday.
Oh, so the day after
Yep.
town council, okay.
Yeah, so-
everything timing-wise could work.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, so that's why we're pushing this pretty quickly here.
Gotcha, thank you.
And they just released the grant less than a month ago. So they didn't give us a lot of time either.
Yeah.
But looking at their grant, the awards that they've handed out over the years, a lot of it is geared towards like recreational trail development, bridges, things like that to promote connectivity within towns. So that's why I think this is a worthwhile opportunity for the town.
Chris?
Yeah, I think it's really great. One of the things that we're trying to approach is different activities for different age levels. Certainly we have parks like Quarry Park and Dividend that might be a little more challenging. As someone with little kids, Elmridge Park is used by all sorts of families. In a lot of cases, that's like a little kid and a grandparent, and having a trail like this would give folks with the ability to kind of easily use that type of space. You could push a stroller on it.
Mm-hmm.
Grandparents can help out too. Tired parents can help out. And I think that's a really good use for the space. And it would certainly, it wouldn't be like an if you build it, they will come scenario. They're already there.
They're already there.
It'd be a great use to connect to the neighborhoods around it too.
Well, you think about how many times you dropped your kids off at a practice, or and some people want to sit around and watch their kid, and some parents don't want to sit there, but they have to stay there. Well, now they can go for a walk. They can go walk a couple miles and kill some time and enjoy it and get a good workout in while they're at it. So that's just one of the secondary things too.
John, consent agenda, or should this be
Yes.
new business?
Consent.
agenda? Okay.
Yes.
Do you have any questions, or should I make?
No,
a motion?
I'm all set.
So with that, I'd like to make a motion to move to the consent agenda authorization for the town to apply for a 2021 Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection and Recreational Trails grant for Elmridge Park in the amount of $200,000.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
See you, Craig.
Go Sox.
Just lost half the voters.
I'm with you, Chris.
It's bipartisan.
Move on to item 3. Well, I guess we're going to stay on some approvals tonight. Discussion, possible action, authorization, State of Connecticut Emergency Management and Homeland Security. So this is
Any
our
luck with it, Shimona?
Sure.
annual renewal.
It
Yep.
is. This is our annual renewal, and this is a grant that goes to the general fund as one of our small state grants, so it's offsetting expenditures that are already in our general budget. So this is our formality in giving the town manager authorization to sign for acceptance of that grant.
Do we know how much it is, or does it say here?
No, not really.
Usually
I
runs
think
less
they
than
get it from the
20,000.
federal government, and then it goes to our Region 3 and
Gotcha.
then they
Yeah.
divvy it up. Well, usually a quarterly payments, that's one I just
Comes
saw recently.
quarterly. I think last year it was just shy over 15,000.
Is this for the consent agenda also?
Yep.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions, or want me to?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so with that, I'd like to make a motion to move to the town council consent agenda for Monday, authorization of the town to apply for the State of Connecticut Emergency Management and Homeland Security Grant.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item number 4, discussion possible action, lease purchase of F-350 truck for the fire department.
Okay. This will be another consent agenda item also. This is as it says, lease purchase for the F-350. This is a replacement of the 2016, no, actually, it's an older vehicle, 16-year-old vehicle from the fire mechanics. So this is a replacement of that vehicle. This is a 2022. Although it's going to take us several months to receive it, there's a deadline to actually get the orders in for the 2022s, which cuts off the mid-November. So we're asking to put this one for approval. The annual payments is a 3-year lease. We're leasing it through Ford Credit, who is the financing group for Gengris, who is on the state bid. And we had budgeted $15,250, and the annual payments are $14,937.
Just a quick question, because this is for the fire department, is there any way to use ARP fund money for that?
Would not necessarily for a vehicle. I think we can do it for crime type and, and COVID related, so I wouldn't see this fitting into that.
Even
The
it's an
definitions,
emergency
no.
vehicle? Okay,
No, not vehicles.
trying.
I know. It was a good try, but no.
That's already part of the approved budget, so
We did have it in CIP already.
Yeah, no, that's
Correct.
okay.
good idea, though.
Can always figure out another use for the money.
It's worth asking, get an answer. out there.
Absolutely. Any questions, Chris? Entertain a motion?
Okay. Excuse me, I'd like to make a motion to move to consent agenda from Monday's town council meeting, the authorization to lease/purchase a Ford F-350 truck for the fire department for 3 annual payments of $14,937.97.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Keep going with our leases. Item 5, discussion possible action, lease and purchase Ford Transit van for the facilities department.
That's correct. And this is for the facilities mechanic people, the electricians. This is a transit van that's going to come equipped with the, to where they can put their equipment inside and, hang their electrical apparatus and so forth. It's a 3-year lease. Again, this is through Ford Motor Credit. Financing was with Gengris Ford. That was on the state bid. In this particular case, we were able to get a 2021 that is presently available, and we'll be getting that within the next few weeks if this is approved. Unfortunately, this one we have in our budget for $12,200. The annual payments are at $13,328. But the request, I think at this point, is going to be considering the pricing of the transit vans and the equipment needs for the facility departments, and being on the state bid, this will meet their needs.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Yeah, so, how do we compare on the pickup truck compared to what we had in the budget for that line item? Do we break, is it a wash? I mean, it's not a tremendous amount of money, but.
Yeah, and it's not quite a wash, it's slightly over overall, but I think in the capital improvement page, in general, we'll do well for year end, because there are other line items in there.
And you mentioned it's the state bid. They're hitting us for 6.35% interest. Is that the best they do for interest on the?
They bid the base price of the vehicle, not the financing, unfortunately.
Generally, the size of the amount we're financing, usually the best way to go through is with Ford Motor Credit. They'll do those small ones because they're brother-sister type operations. If you want to go outside, some of these people want, blanket leases that you're going to lease millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands. So you probably get a better rate on a dump truck, but this is more at the size, and probably we save the money. We save money on the ease of financing, paperwork, and so on.
All right.
I'm sorry.
No, that's good, good point.
Anything else?
Just a question, along those lines, I mean, we're looking at $37,000 if we were to purchase it outright. What's the probability of purchasing it just as a outright purchase? I mean, do we have room anywhere within the budget to just do it as a one-time purchase, avoid the 6%, Chris is right. I mean, that's a crazy rate based on today's market. We're not talking huge dollars, but is there the ability to do that at all?
I would say probably not at this point, because
Okay.
we're entering into, the winter, and we're not sure what the storms will do, and if there will be, and that type of expense. So I think it's probably early on to make that kind of an expense.
Okay.
I would-
Would we have the option to prepay, like, say next year came, we want to just pay both the final 2 years payment to save a little interest? Is that an option in this, the way this lease is written, or once you're in the 3
No,
years?
it'll still be the same amount, unfortunately.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Sure. I'd like to move to the consent agenda from Monday's town council meeting, authorization for the town to lease last purchase a Ford Transit van for the facilities department by way of making 3 annual payments of $13,328.27 each year.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Moving forward, item 6, update general obligation refunding bonds.
This is, just wanted to give an update. We had talked before about refunding bonds. We had bonds out for $18 million back in 2014, and we're looking at it being callable for the beginning of 2022. So we're looking at working with our financial advisors on this. There's potential of saving, ideally. And we're hearing $1 million, but we'll see what happens with the rates as they change. So we're working with them on a schedule and hopefully doing a closing around mid-February. We're hoping to get our year-end audit closed. We get some good numbers to go in with it and do that presentation. So it's kind of an aggressive approach to do an audit and a budget and squeeze in a refunding of bonds, but it's definitely something we want to do. Again, it was $18 million in 2014, so we'll be refunding the remaining, which is about $13 million for the balance of that, which would be 12 years. So that's our game plan. As we get closer, we can give you more updated. We just want to let you know that's what we're working on right now, and we'll get closer to the schedule and what we're doing.
Okay, and Mona, just for anybody that's not familiar with refunding of bonds, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, bonds can't be refinanced. A refunding means you're paying them off and reissuing new bonds as a replacement,
That's
normally at a more attractive rate.
That's the goal, yes, definitely at a more attractive rate. We looked back, and that 18 million was at 2.76.
Okay.
So, kind of give us an idea where we're trying to go. And obviously, it's for a shorter period of time. You're not doing it, similar to like your mortgage where you do 30 years and 30 years.
Right.
You're doing the remainder of the life of that instead of a full refunding for the full term.
And the other question on this, for me, is when we discussed this a few months back, we talked, and it was right after the budget, that there was a potential for some of these bonds potentially being issued as tax-free. And I don't know if anything's ever moved forward with that.
Well, that was going to be tied into this Biden bill for infrastructure.
Structure, right.
And there was supposed to be a clause in this huge bill allowing towns to do these tax-free refinancing earlier than the call dates. And what we just ended up doing is we waited for this bill that hasn't passed yet, and we're getting close to our call date, which is in April. So I believe it's gonna be a tax-free transaction because we're waiting till the official call date to do it. They'll do some sort of escrowing of funds to make it all work out, but.
Okay.
But we were looking to do this over the past few months, but
Right, yeah.
that bill's still lingering out there.
May run out of time, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Just a quick, I know some of the recent financings we've done, the town's actually gotten a good premium as a result of these. I don't know if you got to the point with underwriters yet or anything, but is that a possibility with this as well, or?
Well, yeah,
This
we haven't
is
decided
a little different offer, where I think that you actually go out with, you have underwriters bidding on it.
So you
And
gotta
then
see
they
how
go
that
out and then they sell the products. I don't think there's premiums associated with that, but hopefully we'll get lower interest payments and hopefully our principal will probably stay the same, but
Right.
I don't think premium comes into play on a refunding bond.
Okay.
minimal.
Yeah, that was going to be similar to my question. You mentioned about $1 million savings, and I wasn't sure how that was going to be reflected. If it was come as a premium or a one-time adjustment, or we're just going to see a lower annual payment that adds up to $1 million over the length of the bond.
Over the lifetime, not, yeah, it's not immediate.
$1 million could be a sales pitch by our FA.
I know, we
Get
gotta
us
see it
to
happen.
encourage.
Well, whatever number that
I think
happens
it's
to
like
be.
a savings of $1 million over the next 13 years.
Yes.
So
Yeah, so
if we
that's
didn't
like
do the
70 grand a year,
refinancing
so that's,
and kept the same deal in place, we would lose. We have an opportunity to save $1 million doing this refunding.
It's reflected in the annual payment, or in the lower payment, instead of a
Yeah,
one-time
yeah,
payment.
right.
And it's going to be
You
smooth.
probably see it over the years, so maybe it's, hopefully you save $100,000 over each of the coming years.
actually, you'd probably see more savings earlier when the remaining principal is higher than as it goes out.
Yeah.
You're
Right.
paying more principal, yeah.
Any other questions on the refunding? All right. Update on reserve for capital, non-recurring expenditures through September 30th.
Okay, yep, yeah, the first 3 months, we didn't really spend much, except the Board of Ed's West Hill HVAC project progressed. I believe they wrapped it up over the Columbus Day long weekend, and it's sort of broken out into 2 phases. Phase 1 was approved by the council based on monies being returned to the town that was reallocated towards the roof and some of the HVAC equipment. And then Phase 2 of it was coming from the Board of Ed, from an ESA 2 grant that they got permission from the state to allocate funds towards purchasing, completing the HVAC project. So that came in at $712,000 of ESA money. And as I say, so far, the bulk of the money probably went towards equipment that was installed over the weekend. So that project is pretty much completed. And other than that, we did have a Parks Department pickup truck that was deadlined back in June or July, and it was a truck that they used for the wintertime to plow the various school and town parking lots. We did have some money in non-reoccurring set aside for vehicles. So Parks went out and looked for vehicles that were on the lot that we could acquire right away so that we had it for the summertime, for the wintertime. And they were able to find a Chevrolet dealership under the state bid that actually had 3 trucks on the lot. So we were able to pick up the pickup truck for about $30,000, and it's already the town already has it in its fleet, and that was about it. And other than that, the $3,000 relates to the land that we're leasing next door to the parking lot across the street on Church Street that was supposed to be used as for the construction of the community center, and come to find out they didn't need it between the parking lots, and they used our gymnasium as a place to store things as well as work out of their Instead of, they didn't have to get a trailer and all that, so that was it, so we got a couple, we got a vehicle for winter time, and then the West Hill School project is pretty much wrapped up for now.
Okay. Questions for John? Well, thank you, John.
Always a good story, not unforty tales.
I hope you're not offended we didn't have questions.
No. Storytelling. Feel good.
Item 8, state aid for municipalities, 21-22 budget.
Okay, yes, so for the month of September, we did receive early our pilot money, which was expected for October, but we did receive the entire amount of pilot money, the $957,188. So we've got that 100% and actually a month early. So a bit of good news to share on that.
Okay, nothing else is due until October.
October will be the ECS money coming in,
Okay,
the stabilization grant.
all right. Any questions?
Just for the pilot funds, do you know what the percentage we're at in terms of how much we get versus the taxable property?
I honestly
No.
don't know.
No, we're at the mercy of the state.
Yeah, because I know there's a discussion about, increasing funding to the program, and everybody gets some percentage of what it would otherwise be. I wasn't sure if we knew offhand. Not to surprise you with the question, I just had a chat with someone over the weekend, a very exciting discussion where it came up, and I wasn't sure what our percentage was. So.
No, as I said, I think it was an increase this year, so we thank the state for that. We would do pretty good if we got what the residents pay with the Veterans Hospital and that laboratory, a lot of DOT operations on Route 3. And, we do have a lot of state. We always like it when the state comes in and rents space, like they're doing over for the lottery. So we're
Right.
getting the taxes on the building from the landlord.
But not the pilot.
Yeah. So those are the good ones, Chris. You should push for.
I'll get on that.
I'll put a note down.
Have lease space in town, not buy.
All right. Item 9, monthly financial report, September 30th, 2021, pre-audit.
Okay. So we'll start off with the tax collector's report. And as you can see, we're at 55.7. And that's in comparison to last year at the end of September of 54.4. Also pointing out on the that 3-year average, and I think I've mentioned before, so pardon me if I'm redundant, but when we did the 3-year average, we're excluding the prior year, which was unique and skewing off the averages. So seeing that the 3-year average, we're still ahead by the 424,000 for the benchmark is definitely a positive thing to see on the tax collector. So we're looking at a good collection year at this point in time. I'll go to the next page, which is all revenues. I've already mentioned the taxes and the state revenue, which has come in so far. Other than that, I would probably just point out, you can see the conveyance taxes, which is about halfway down at 43%. And I think we're still seeing some of this fluctuation in the real estate market, so forth. So that seems to be faring very well for us. The miscellaneous revenue is at 63%, and that's mostly attributed to the Kerma distribution. We got member distribution, which was over 50,000. So we'll watch that stay probably at that level throughout the rest of the year. And other than that, I think no great highlights unless you have any questions on revenues.
No, I was just going to make one minor note. On your memo, the meeting for the finance, it's not a special meeting, it's a regular meeting.
Oh, okay.
So just, other than that, everything's
Although we like that you think we're special.
You're very special.
It's special because we're all here in person.
That's it.
We're a
I
button
couldn't
down.
get out of the sink. The next page is something different. We thought we'd try something different, and I didn't want to get too deep and involved, but at least kind of show us a different vision of what's happening on general fund. And what you're seeing is a comparison of the trial balance. And again, this is just on general fund only, looking at 3-year comparison. The 1920, 2021, and then this year through, for the 21-22. Again, this is through August, although this, the revenue expenditures in the other pages are through September. But to take a snapshot through 8/31 for this particular report. And just wanted to see if we want to try something like this for future reports or just something to look at today. And what we've got is the categories at a very high level. Cash and liquid assets. You can see that varies at some larger amounts. And basically what's in that is not just the general fund. That would include any cash that's transferred to Board of Ed for their expenditures and for payroll. And also in the tax office. Ordinarily, we're having the tax office do collections and then drawing it off and then putting it into investments, particularly in these earlier months, you know, the draw off. So you'll see just a transition, you know, from a daily basis. But most of the cash and assets are in the investments. Our investments
Those
are.
are more like money markets.
That,
Yeah.
but you're right, John,
I
that's
didn't know
correct.
whether you're switching to account.
John's gonna, but you're right, so the investments are actually, for the most part, just money markets or varying banks that we could get, something like a money market or the stiff fund from the state and so forth. As far as receivables, for the most part, I think for this year, the 1.2 million is high, looking at the others. And that's only, at this point, we have a large receivable, and that's coming from FEMA, because we're still waiting for them to, although they've approved our FEMA storm, they still haven't transferred the cash forward, so that's a large receivable for us. Payables, I think, speak for themselves. Overall, dollar-wise, nothing unusual or large there. Due to other funds, which is probably something that not everyone gets to see, but working with the general fund, all of our expenditures are going through the general fund. So you're going to see, due to other funds, for example, that 6.6 million would have the, like the $3 million of the ARPA. Because ARPA money is actually in a special revenue, but the cash is collected and is in those accounts above, which is the investments. That would also include any road referendum money that hasn't been expended yet. Money that would be from the senior center that hasn't been expended. So that's what that due to other funds would be. And deferred taxes is more of a booking entry. We try at year end to identify if we had to freeze frame ourselves and find anyone that had paid taxes in advance. And this would be the dollar amount that we would have to pay back. So that'd be our, what we're calling deferred. We actually calculate that at year end, not regular monthly, but it will show up on the balance sheet. And we are familiar with our fund balance. Most of it's undesignated. The designated is what we're putting forward into this year for possible covering the revenues and expenditures for the year. And as we know, we've been watching very closely the revenues and expenditure numbers. That's for that prior month of August. So for the most part, the fluctuations, I think, stay pretty steady from month to month, but I think if we watch and see how if it was more on a, like a line chart, I think you might see over time that it does its peaks and valleys where, you know, August will run high with the cash and then we'll start to see it, you know, go downward. So Thought we'd throw that out to show you what trial balance would look like and give any input, whether you'd like to see something like this again, or if we'd prefer to see it in more of a line chart and less numbers. Definitely open for recommendations or questions.
And, this came about, I had asked Mona to kind of, as a finance committee, kind of look at finance the way you'd look at it in a for-profit entity, a little bit ability to look at cash flow and other ideas, not to critique it, but just to have an understanding of it. So personally, I think this is very helpful, because
Good.
the other way we only look at revenue and expenditures, we don't look at anything on the balance sheet side, and it's kind of looking at one side of the equation to me. So I like it. And moving forward, I mean, a line chart, seeing the fluctuations, and it truly makes sense to me, because you're going to see your inflow of taxes and the revenue, and then your expenses go out.
Right.
And then your second payments come in and goes back up and then flows back out through the year. So the investment piece is interesting too. Unfortunately, we're probably getting like 0.1% on interest. So it's
That's it.
While we have a nice nest egg there, we're not able to get a nice return on it.
Right.
Yeah, I would agree. One of the things I scratch my head about when I go through the budget cycles, we never see the balance sheet side of things, the assets. So this is great. So when we're looking at this, just because of the environment we're in, and when we had the, going through the pandemic, would you almost look at 2021 versus 2019, and 2020 is kind of going to be its own little category, or?
I
is it-
would.
Yeah.
I would. In all honesty, when I put it together, I really wanted to put in the 1920 year in there
Yeah.
to kind of get a more sense of it, because otherwise you'd have, I think if we continued this format, you'd start to see these anomalies happen, because that really wasn't a normal year. So
Right.
you're right. It's probably better to look at the first column as a norm.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate something like this, though.
Good with that, Chris?
Yep, no, nice job. I think it's very readable, and of course, charts would be cool, but this is a great start.
And then, Mona, if we were to kind of annualize your weekly spend cash flow out, is it somewhere around $1.5 million on a weekly I don't know if you look at it weekly or how you look at it.
It'd probably be more like bi-weekly, because,
Okay.
what you're seeing is the largest expenses is the town does a bi-weekly payroll, and so does the Board of Ed, and we're taking their expenditures and ours in at the same time. So you tend to have that around like the 15th and the 30th of the month, it'll have a peak. So like the first week will probably be about about 500,000, and then they
Right.
might shoot up to it's like a 2 million, and then it peaks down. So you'll have weeks that'll go up and down within the month.
Okay. I find that very, very informative and helpful. And the expenditure side?
Sure. And for the expenditure side, we're in September, so the first quarter. So if we were thinking maybe 25% being our guide, I would say for the most part, things are where they need to be, where they should be. Probate court is at a 0, but we may remember that we had a credit from them for that first portion of the year, so we're going to see that for this report. And I think other than that, we've got the highway road maintenance. Appears to be on the low side, but keeping in mind that they have the street lights and so forth, some of those that are more quarterly and larger payments that would show. So it's giving the impression of it being low, but it's the timing of payments. Your aquatics is on the high side, and obviously that's very seasonal. That will then taper off as we go throughout. And other than that, I'm not seeing, I would say probably insurance again at 50%. Again, more of a timing. We're doing quarterly payments, and you're seeing this being a prepaid for the upcoming. So other than that, I don't see anything. It's early in the year, so nothing standing out to be of concern.
Great. Any questions on the expenditure side?
So the employee benefits is up a little over 25%, or it's up higher than the 25. Is that because of the timing of payments, or did we have any more payouts that we weren't
Yeah.
expecting?
We actually pay it in advance, so for end of September, you would see October end, so you're always a month ahead of the game.
And then we haven't made our pension contributions yet. We usually, maybe wait to January
Probably January.
for the next round of cash coming in. So that's the big, and usually we're always a month ahead on our health insurance. So it's sort of a balancing act right now.
Any others, Chris? All right, I know under other, we have a couple of items, the Rocky Hill Fire Department and Rocky Hill Volunteer Ambulance stipends.
That's correct. We did both groups. We did our stipends, the $500 to each, based on those that had received their abatements. We had the list from the fire chief and from the chief of ambulance. And we had paid out to the group for the fire department, 49 members for $24,500, and for ambulance, 55 members for $27,500. And all of those checks were given out to the chiefs to be distributed.
Great. Any comments, discussion, or questions?
It's good that they went out that quick. I think that's great to hear. And then we had a lot of discussion about trying to make sure that no one was left behind, any contingency cases. Do we know if we actually had to do any of those contingency cases where the chief said, actually, this person, for whatever reason, went above and beyond, but they didn't meet all the requirements? Do you know if that happened?
John
Well, I
worked
don't
with
think
them.
they really had anybody above and beyond. As I said, it was good timing because they did have that pension and property abatement qualifications, and a high percentage of those people were a high percentage of the firefighters did qualify for that. So I think it was a good test to use to make sure that people that deserved it did get the stipend. So I think everybody that did work during this COVID pandemic did receive the stipend.
Great, thank you.
And Mona, the other item, we were going to check to see if Human Services had received their check for the golf tournament at this point.
Yeah, and I touched base with them again, and still they're waiting with the Chamber of Commerce
Okay,
to
no
get
problem.
back to them. So at this point, no total to report back.
Okay. And last item for other, just wanted to be in the last Finance Committee meeting for this election cycle. Thank everybody on the committee for their efforts, and wish everybody success in the upcoming election.
Absolutely, and certainly thanks to our town staff as well for all the hard
Absolutely.
work you
Thank
guys
you.
do.
Thank you. Thank you.
So,
Doing it.
any other items, John?
No.
Mona?
Mona?
No, I have no others, and I agree. Thank you. It's been a great group. Let's hope to see it continue.
Yeah.
Well,
Chris,
someone's got to be here.
there'll be 3 people here at some point, right?
And we hope they do a good job. Oh, you can still come and heckle.
That's right. There's no public comments
That
for
could be
this,
fun.
though, so.
That's a tradition that we're gonna upheld.
Well, while we have fun, entertain a motion to adjourn, and we can have fun elsewhere.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Oh,
Aye.
Aye.
All right. You want to use the gavel?
I'd never used the gavel.
Thank you.